Hello and welcome. For those of you just joining us today, my name's Jonathan Doe, and I like to collect artifacts and relics from infamous true crime cases. And this is my show, where I share with you pieces from that collection and the stories behind them. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about one of America's most infamous serial killers. I'm talking about John Wayne Gacy, the man who murdered 33 young men and boys and buried the majority of them underneath the crawl space of his house. And what I have to share with you today is soil from that property. That's right, this is the dirt that was actually used to bury the majority of his victims. But within the realm of relics related to John Wayne Gacy, something like this really isn't that significant. So instead of focusing this episode on just this piece, we're gonna sit down and actually look at the collection of a serious Gacy collector. Jordan from the True Crime Collective has given Murderabilia Show and Tell exclusive access into his private Gacy collection. So let's check it out. This is Murderabilia Show and Tell. Welcome back to Murderabilia Show and Tell. I'm your host, Jonathan Doe, and I'm sitting here over Skype with Jordan, the owner of the True Crime Collective and an expert collector and dealer on John Wayne Gacy. How you doing today, man?
What's going on, man? Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, man. So I kind of want to start off with having you talk a little bit about the True Crime Collective. How did you get that started, and what does it all entail for people who aren't really familiar with it?
So I started True Crime Collective about 4 years ago or so. I was working at a screen printing shop. I was a screen printer and production manager for a long time. And in the back of my head, I always wanted to start my own clothing line. And as I'm sure a lot of people, have the dream of starting a clothing line and it, going somewhere. And I never really knew what I wanted to do exactly, but true crime, serial killers, cults, it's always been something that I've been really interested in, passionate about ever since I was a kid, growing up watching true crime documentaries and stuff. And one day it just kind of clicked in my head. I was like, what if I incorporated something with serial killers? Not only just serial killers, but something with serial killers that hadn't been done before. So what I kind of decided to do is go the route of like a traditional tattoo flash style featuring serial killers, cult leaders, and that kind of thing. And I got a hold of my buddy Corey Thompson of Lost Dog Tattoo, and I'd said, hey man, this is what I want to do. I need you to draw some designs up for me. And I pretty much told him my ideas, and he put it to paper, and they turned out incredible. Every time I hit him up for a design, it turned out exactly like what I had in my head. And from there, I started with like 2-3 designs and just kind of, so basically that's how it all got started. And since then, I've got about 15 different designs, and I've worked with a lot of different artists, and it's just grown way more than I ever thought it would. So I'm really happy with that, the support that I've gotten, from the niche group that this is. So
that's awesome, man. I also noticed on your website, like you have your clothing line, but you also sell like Murderabilia and stuff specifically. Like I saw a lot of Gacy paintings and stuff. How did that like transition over into selling Murderabilia?
So through the clothing line, I met a lot of different individuals that were into selling Murderabilia. And before that, to be honest with you, I didn't even know that it was a thing. Like, I knew that there was stuff that existed out there. Obviously, serial killers that spend decades in prison, they're bound to, write some letters, and people are bound to, to get some stuff. I knew a lot. I knew that Gacy paintings existed, but I didn't realize that it was easier than most people think to get your hands on it. So through the clothing line and being active on Instagram, you meet different people that have been doing this for a long time and specialize in Murderabilia. And you get to talking with them, and then you just realize that, all this stuff's out there. And I started collecting myself before I actually started dealing it, selling it, trading it, any of that. Started just like small, got a couple letters, and then, eventually worked my way up through the ranks and ended up getting some paintings. And now I have a pretty big collection. Most of my collection is Gacy paintings. That's the thing that I'm the most interested in personally. There's guys out there that they just collect Jeffrey Dahmer stuff, or they just collect Ted Bundy stuff. I don't want to say that I just collect Gacy stuff, because I have stuff from Bundy and Dahmer and Ramirez and stuff like that. But the majority of my collection is John Wayne Gacy items. I got into that actually very randomly. A guy from overseas hit me up on through my email. He found my website and he hit me up through my email, and he sent me this big long thing about how his dad was pen pals with John Wayne Gacy, and that his dad had recently passed away and left him with an enormous amount of letters, paintings, and such. And he was trying to get rid of a lot of it. He's like, I want to keep a couple just because they were my dad's, but for the most part, I want to get rid of this stuff. I have no use for it. I'm not that interested in it, whatever. So I pretty much was like, yeah, man, send me some pictures. I'll take a look at it and see if there's anything that, I personally would be interested in, because at that point I hadn't even thought about like, oh yeah, let me pick all this up and resell it, because I didn't know anything about the market at the time. So he sent me, I think maybe 10 or 15 different paintings, some paperwork, original price sheets for his paintings, that kind of stuff. And I ended up buying a painting myself and picking up a couple letters. And after posting it, when I got it, I was so excited. I'm like, yo, I got a John Wayne Gacy painting. Like, how rad is that? People just started flooding my inbox. Like, where did you get that? How much do you want for it? That kind of thing. And then I'm like, well, if there's a big market for this, then, maybe I should pick up some of these other paintings and, start selling Murderabilia. And that was my introduction into selling John Wayne Gacy paintings. I have sold other stuff. I've sold some Jeffrey Dahmer stuff, Bundy stuff, Ramirez. And it's crazy how quick it goes. Like, a lot of times I don't even get the chance to put it on my website. I'll post it on my story, or I'll reach out to people that I know collect this stuff and just say, hey, I got this, and are you interested? And it's gone. So there's a very big demand and market for it. But yeah, the Gacy paintings has been my personal passion, I guess you could say, in the world of memorabilia, Murderabilia, and that's mostly what I sell. If I find one that I don't keep for myself, because I like to keep a lot of these for myself, I'll show you here in a little bit. Those are the ones that I end up selling. And yeah, that's how it is. Just like Taylor with Cult Collectibles, he's the Dahmer guy now. It's like Jordan, True Crime Collective, I'm the Gacy guy. So I have a lot of people that hit me up about wanting Gacy paintings, and the way that the network of Murderabilia dealers go, it's like somebody goes to Taylor for Gacy paintings, that, hey, hit up Jordan, True Crime Collective, he's your Gacy guy. And it's crazy how it's like turned into that over such a short period of time. But yeah, I have a lot of people hit me up to sell, a lot of people hit me up to buy. And the one big trick of it is making sure that the items are legit. That's the big thing, because I've had plenty of people hit me up and say, hey man, I'm looking to get rid of this painting, this Gacy painting. I know you sell them and you buy them, and they send it to me and I'm like, that's 100% fake. No, thank you. Not saying that they knew it was fake, but sorry to tell you, that painting that you spent a couple grand on a few years ago, yeah, it's fake. So yeah, that's one thing that you run into a lot too.
Well, I think that's a good question that I think a lot of people are going to ask is, what is your vetting process? Like, what is your process in determining whether something is legitimate or a fraud?
So, I mean, I can't give away all my secrets, but there's a few very obvious things about it. The first off is, if you look at the back of the painting, the type of canvas that it's on is first. There's primarily 3 different types of canvases that Gacy used when he was in prison. Marilla, Dick Blick, and then Fredericks. I know Gacy's art dealer, Rick, he was primarily supplying Fredericks canvases to Gacy during his involvement. So a lot of the later ones you see are pretty much all on Fredericks. But that's not to say, I mean, he was in prison on death row. He had to use what he could get, but there's that. He had a numbering system for all of his paintings. He did about roughly 2,500 of them when he was on death row. And if you ever see there's two sets of numbers on the back. The first one is total amount of paintings he did. The second was the total of that specific painting. So if this pogo was number one, the first set of numbers was 100, and then the second set of numbers was 2, that would mean it was his 100th painting total in the second pogo he ever did. That's not the numbers on this one. I'm just saying for reference so you get the idea. If you ever see paintings, and I've seen plenty of them, where that first set of numbers is like 3,000 or 4,000, immediate red flag. He never got over like 2,500 or 2,600. So if you ever see him up there, people, everybody listening, if you're looking at buying a Gacy painting and it's not for me, if that number is over that number, stay the hell away from it because it's fake. There's a lot too, like I can't exactly show you right now, but there's ones out there that like if you know what a real pogo looks like this one behind me, you'll see a lot of the fake ones. They're completely different. Like they're not even close. And a lot of people don't even know that. Like the Museum of Death in New Orleans, they had dozens of fake Gacy paintings hanging in their museum.
Wow.
And they got called out for it. And they took them all down and said, hey, we didn't know. And, the market's been flooded with them. There's so many out there. So people just really got to be careful if they're buying, especially like privately from just some Joe Schmo on the internet that posts it. That doesn't have any reputation in the murderabilia community, that doesn't know anybody, and that person might not even know it's fake. That's the thing. I've ran into that where like genuinely somebody was trying to sell one and not trying to screw anybody over, but they bought that painting years ago and then they didn't know it was fake. They thought it was real. Well, now they're trying to resell it and they're learning that it's fake. And, it's a hard pill to swallow knowing that you spent a substantial amount of money on a fake painting, but it happens often. I've had a lot of people hit me up trying to sell their stuff or even just saying, hey, can you take a look at this? Because I've always had reservations about it, like not knowing if it was legit or not. And take a look at it and said, hey, sorry to break the bad news to you, but yeah, that's a fake painting. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah.
I definitely want to dive into all of the relics of Gacy that you have, but for the people listening who may not be as familiar with the case, I know that he's like one of the heavy hitters within the serial killer world, but you're an expert, and I was wondering if you could just give us kind of an overview of his case, who he is, what he's known for, and why his paintings are so significant.
So anybody that doesn't know who John Wayne Gacy was an American serial killer who murdered at least, and I'll come back to at least, 33 men and boys in the Chicago, Illinois area. He was known for several different things. He was very big in politics in his community, which is one reason that I think he went so long without getting caught, is because people tend to look the other way when somebody is high up involved in politics, all about who you know. He dressed up as a clown. He would go to children's hospitals and kids' parties, dress up as Pogo or Patches. Those were his two clown personalities. And he was he owned his own business, PDM Contractors, which was painting, decorating, and maintenance. So you put all three of those things together. He owned a very, very successful local business. He was very active in politics in the area, and he went to kids' parties. It's very easy to see how somebody can get away with 33 murders in over a 10-year period. So when Gacy was arrested, what led up to Gacy getting arrested was there was a kid named Rob Peast that ended up going missing. And one of his last encounters that was witnessed was with John Wayne Gacy. He said, hey, I'm going to go talk to this guy about a job. Gacy was apparently offering him to come work for him at PDM. And that was the last time he was ever seen again. So what led to investigators really putting the spotlight under Gacy was when they were conducting a search on his home. They found a receipt in his garbage. It was very conveniently right on top, and there's been recent speculation that that evidence was actually planted, which, whether it was planted or not, Gacy was still guilty. He still committed the crimes, but that was what they really needed, and that receipt was in Gacy's garbage right on top and had been in Rob Peace's jacket pocket. So that's when they were like, they tied Rob Peace to Gacy, and they ended up doing a second search of his house, and that's when they went down in the crawl space and they started digging, and they just kept pulling up bones, just kept pulling up bodies. And after days and days of excavation, there was 27 under the house. There was another 2 on the property, and then there were 4 more that he had dumped in the river. So 33 bodies total. There's been a lot of, I'm sure a lot of you have seen the most recent Netflix documentary, the John Wayne Gacy tapes. A lot of unreleased audio footage of him confessing to and denying his crimes. It's very confusing. I mean, it really kind of shows you a peek into just how delusional he was, because in one take he's confessing and saying, oh yeah, I killed them, they deserved it, and then in another he's like, no, I had nothing to do with those crimes. But there's been it's not on audio that I know of, but that he supposedly confessed to killing 45 when they asked him, so there's 33, and he was like, no, it's a little higher. And they're like, well, what would you say it is? And he said, I think 45 would be a good guess. So there's apparently more. It's, will we ever know? Probably not. But I think it is safe to say that there was probably more. There's been a lot of speculation if he had accomplices. He had 2 kids working for him at the time that all these murders were happening, and they lived with him. He had them digging holes in his crawl space and putting down lime. And to me, that seems like accomplice. There's been a lot of murderers out there. Dean Corll, Elmer Wayne Henley, that was kind of like a killer accomplice case. So would it be surprising if those 2 kids were accomplices? Not at all. Did they kill anybody? Probably not. I think that he was probably either just paying them or blackmailing them to help him, or even luring the kids to his house would be a big thing too. But yeah, either way, he was an enormous piece of shit, and he killed a lot of innocent men, and he got exactly what he deserved in the end.
Well, one thing that I'm really interested in is you talked a little bit about the fact that he, in some instances, would confess, and in other instances, he would deny his crimes. But he also wrote a book, and I was really curious if you could give us some insight on that book and what he wrote in that book.
Yeah, so the book that he wrote is it's called Question of Doubt, and I personally have the book. There was, I think, about 500 copies printed. I have the book. I haven't read it. I started it, and I just couldn't. It's bad. Like, I think I got like 25 pages in, and I had to put it down. I'm like, this is just, I couldn't get through it. I'll get through it one day. I'll tough it out. But the book basically is him maintaining his innocence. And, I can't speculate exactly what all is in the book because I haven't read it. But from people that I know that have read it, he's maintaining his innocence and saying that he was set up and that he was framed and trying to prove that he didn't have anything to do with these crimes, which is total nonsense. I mean, 27 bodies don't just show up under your house without you knowing. Like, that house was not big at all, And so yeah, this book, you'll see it out there. There's I see copies of it pop up on eBay quite a bit. As recent as a couple weeks ago. There's signed copies, there's unsigned copies, there's copies that have, I'll just show you actually. So I have one of the good ones here. It's got a slip cover on it on both sides. It's got pictures of Pogo, and then you open it up, and it's actually really nicely presented, but it says Question of Doubt, John Wayne Gacy, and same thing with the there. And then on the inside, he wrote a little note, and I'll just, before I show you, it just says, greetings, reader. There's always at least 2 sides to a story. Thank you for reading it from my point of view. Signed, John Wayne Gacy. and that's the page right there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's an incredible
So,
piece. That's cool.
yeah, very cool. I'm not 100% sure. From what I was told, he only signed and noted about like 100 of the copies of them, because there's a lot of copies out there that are completely unsigned. Like there's no signature in them at all. There's ones that don't have like the slip cover. So apparently this was like one of the more like rare ones, from one of the first edition. But yeah, so he maintained that innocence for a long time, and there's interviews you can go watch that he did later on, not too long before his execution, where he's that Devil in Disguise documentary. That would be a good one to check out, because they show a lot of those interviews where he's got this binder. He filed everything. Like the dude literally kept tabs on like everything he did that day. Like 9 o'clock called Karen, 10 o'clock 8 such and such, just like, so he had this thick binder of just all this stuff, and he's sitting down talking to these guys about how he's innocent and how he had nothing to do with these crimes. But then in another part of the same interview, they ask him like, oh, well, show us the rope trick. And for anybody that doesn't know the rope trick, he would basically put a rope around their neck, and he'd make a slip knot, and he would put like a pencil or pen or some sort of little shunt in there, and he would twist it to apply pressure, right? And that's how he would fuck with them, basically, is, he'd torture them. He'd cut off their, breathing, mm-hmm. and then he'd lessen up on it so they catch their breath, and then he'd, crank it tight again. And the investigator said, oh, well, show us the rope trick that you would do. And he grabs the thing and he starts showing him the rope trick, but all while maintaining his innocence. And it's just like, you literally just showed one of your methods of torturing, killing people. And then he had the handcuff trick too, which he would put his handcuffs on himself, and put his hands behind his back and cuff himself, and then he'd get out of it. And his victim, he'd say, okay, your turn. Put the handcuffs on, try to get on. Well, as soon as those handcuffs went on, they're done. They're caught. And when they'd be like, okay, I can't get out of it, what's the trick? He'd hold up the key. Oh, you got to have the key. That's the trick. So, yeah.
It seems like he, I don't know, he had a lot of different things going on. Like he compartmentalized things almost, like, oh, I'm innocent, or I'm guilty, or I'm I don't know, like kind of the whole persona that he had within the community of like, oh, I'm gonna dress up like a clown and go help kids, like do performances for sick kids. But then you also had his rope trick and his handcuff trick that he would also do on kids.
Well, he would do that to his victims. I don't think he was going to like children's hospitals and like be like, "Hey, let me put this rope around your neck."
No, but that's what I mean is he was doing that to minors also. Like he was sneaking minors into his house, and so he was really gentle to kids at the hospital and really violent towards the kids that he snuck into his house.
Right, and I think the whole, like, he genuinely, he liked clowns. He had paintings of clowns hanging in his house. He had different clown figurines and stuff in his house. If you look at some of the pictures and stuff, you can see him hanging there. So, like, he always had, like, an interest in clowns, but I think that he knew how to blend into society. Mm-hmm. Like, he knew he was a predator. He knew that what he was doing was wrong, and he probably thought in his mind, as do a lot of serial killers, like, how do I blend in? How do I appear as normal as possible? Okay, if I go to children's hospitals dressed as a clown to try to cheer kids up, nobody's going to think that I could ever hurt a kid. Or if I'm active in politics, people are going to trust me. They're going to be like, oh, because maybe back then politicians weren't as big a pieces of shit as they are now, where like, oh, I'm active in politics, so people find me trustworthy. Like, just different things that they would do to just blend into society, and like owning his own business and all that. And I don't know, man, it's a fine line, between like, did he actually enjoy doing those things, or did he do those things to just appear normal, so to kind of push away suspicion on him of anything,
Yeah.
So, like, oh, John Wayne Gacy, he's under investigation for kidnapping and possibly murdering a kid. Oh, it can't be John. He's great with kids. He goes to the kids' hospitals and parties. He dresses up and entertains them. Like, no, like, there's no way it could be him.
Yeah.
Like, that in his mind, and I think is how he thought, like that nobody would ever suspect him because he would do those kinds of things. But maybe not. Maybe part of him genuinely enjoyed going and doing that stuff, and then there was just that other side to him that also liked to rape and kill them. There's no telling. There's no telling, because he never confessed enough to get those answers. Like, why did you do this? Why did you do that?
Well, I think we've painted a pretty good picture about the case and him as a person. I think it'd be cool for you to show some of the things that you have in your personal collection, and then maybe talk about some things that you've sold or things that have come your way, gotten in your hands.
Sure. Yeah. So actually, and you'll probably have to edit this next part, but I wanted to go back to the book. But this is actually a piece of paperwork. I don't know if you'll be able to zoom in on it or see anything, but this is him, original piece of paperwork of him giving the rights to his book, his manuscript, to a guy named James Toronto. But yeah, this is actually the legal rights of his manuscript, of him leaving those rights to the book to this guy.
Whoa.
So
that's awesome.
So that's pretty cool. I actually just very recently acquired this. So, but
that's huge. That's
anyway.
Cool.
So you want to talk paintings? What do you want to see first? I got a lot of shit here, man.
Well, I think, the two that I hear people talk about the most is pogos and patches. So
okay.
Maybe you can talk about the difference between those two and kind of this.
Sure.
I don't know, all the info about both of them.
Yeah. So I actually don't have a patches anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I had a patches and I got offered an insane amount of money for it, so I sold it because. Money talks, you know what I mean? I'll find another one, someday if I want. But I'll start off with Pogo here. I don't know if you can see the whole thing, but this was definitely his most, when people talk about John Wayne Gacy paintings, this is definitely the one that comes to mind for people, is Pogo the Clown. This is generally the one that most people are looking for. If somebody messages me and they're like, hey man, looking for Gacy paintings, I'm like, yeah, cool. What do you have in mind? Do you have a specific one? Some people, they just want one. They don't even care what it is. They just want a Gacy painting. But 75% of people are like, I want a Pogo, So basically he did about, I want to say 300 or so Pogos. And then he had another rendition of Pogo, which is basically the exact same thing, except he flipped the image. And he never came out and said it. I don't think that he did, and he didn't title them this way, but they're referred to as Goodbye Pogos. Okay. And basically he restarted the numbering over on them, and those were the ones that he supposedly did when he was getting closer to his execution. So everybody calls them the Goodbye Pogo, but I have one, I can show you, but it's just this, and it's flipped. So this is what the back of this one looks like. This was not taped. This was taped by him. So he would tape pictures of Pogo to some of the paintings. This is the only painting that I've ever actually had that photo was still taped to the back. A lot of them you can see where there was things taped, because he would tape letters, notes, price sheets and stuff. But this is the only one that I've ever owned where he actually kept that tape there. So this was his 48th Pogo that he ever painted. So it's a pretty early one, out of roughly 300 or so over, I think he started painting in like 80, 81, 82 is when he started, getting into the painting more. And then when it, became popular, then he was just like cranking them out. I personally think that the earlier Pogos, like this one, look way nicer than some of the later ones. You'll see like this one's got details in the trees. It's got like a bluish sky. You can see the colors are really, bright and vibrant. It looks like he took his time on it. A lot of the later ones, there's no details in the trees. The sky is just drab. And that's because he's on death row and he's just cranking paintings out as quickly as he can. And not taking his time quite as much. So the earlier ones, they definitely always look nicer. I had another early one. I think it was only 4 off from this one. I think it was number 52, if I'm not mistaken. And that was like the same thing. It had really detailed trees and sky and everything. And just give me 1 second. I'll show you my Goodbye. So this one's actually in a nice frame with glass, so it might get a little reflection. But this was the Goodbye Pogo. So as you see, it's just the image is just reversed.
Yeah.
It's the exact same thing, but you can see the trees. Not a whole lot of detail in the trees, and the sky is really drab looking. And maybe that's because he had some cryptic thing where it's like, well, I'm on my way to death row here, and things are a little bit more sad now. So, but yeah, so that's Goodbye Pogo and Pogo. I think the next thing I'll talk about is the hi-ho paintings that you did. Are you familiar with those?
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
cool.
You can give us some more insight into it, because I don't think a lot of people really know about those. I think the general person knows about Pogo, but doesn't know about the other kinds of paintings that he did.
So another one of his really popular paintings, I know they were ones that he liked to do a lot of, were the Hi-Ho series paintings. The Hi-Ho series were the Seven Dwarves. He did 5 different renditions of the Hi-Ho paintings. Hi-Ho in the spring, Hi-Ho in the fall, Hi-Ho in the winter, Hi-Ho around the campfire, and Hi-Ho in the mines. The cool thing, the Hi-Ho series is one of my personal favorites, and a lot of people speculate about the meaning behind them, that they have more of a cryptic meaning than just, oh, it's the Seven Dwarves, with some scenery behind them. A lot of the speculation is that Doc, the older dwarf with the glasses, for those who aren't familiar with the Seven Dwarfs or Disney, he was supposed to represent Gacy, and the other 6 dwarves, the boys, were supposed to represent his victims. So I've heard different theories about different paintings. I won't go too into detail about them, but if you look at them, a lot of them, they're carrying lanterns or shovels and pickaxes, and one can speculate, oh, they're on their way to dig a hole in a crawl space, or, something like that. So the first one I'll show you right here, actually on my wall, this was the first Hi-Ho that I ever got, and it's a big one. This is an 18 by 24 inch painting.
Wow.
But this is titled Hi-Ho in the Spring.
That's awesome.
Pretty cool. The back of this one, this is what makes this painting very rare. This was the first Hi-Ho in the spring that he ever did. And I believe, no, it's not this one. I believe his nephew, this might be his nephew, Larry. His nephew's name was either Larry or Barry. And I have paintings to Larry and to Barry, but I can never remember which one's which. But he wrote a note on it. Happy birthday. Since you like to be number 1, I decided to give you the first one of the new Hi-Ho. Best wishes, John Wayne Gacy. And then he titled it here, Hi-Ho in the Spring, 88, number 1. So this is definitely a rare painting, given that he did about 50 of each of the Hi-Ho paintings, but this was the very first Hi-Ho in the spring. And you can really tell if you go look up pictures of some of the other spring paintings, there's not nearly as much detail in the trees, in the sky, in the mountains. They're real simple looking, and most of them he did on a 16 by 20 inch canvas. This is on a bigger 18 by 24 inch. Mm-hmm. So yeah, he definitely took his time on this one, and honestly, it's a really nice painting. A lot of people say, yeah, John Wayne Gacy's art sucks, and it's like, no, he was actually a pretty decent painter when he wanted to be. If you look at the details in the mountains and stuff. One of the theories I heard about this painting that was kind of interesting is he was known to hide 33s in a lot of his paintings. And this one in particular, the 33, and this is just speculation, this wasn't something that Gacy came out and said, but if you look at the gap between the 3 boy dwarves, there's 3 and 3.
Okay.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's kind of a gap there in between them.
Oh.
So Doc is Gacy, and then you have victims 3 and 3. So could just be somebody overthinking it, looking a little bit too far into it. But regardless, it's still kind of interesting to think about. So I'm just going to keep rolling with the Hi-Ho paintings and get through all those before I go on to other ones, if that's cool with you.
Yeah, definitely.
I have all but the mines. So I have 4 out of the 5. Still looking for the mines. This one is also 18 by 24. This is Hi-Ho in the fall.
It does kind of look like he's got a gap in that one too, like the 3 and the 3.
Yeah, that, and I noticed if you look at the lanterns, there's 3 squares on top and 3 on bottom.
Oh yeah.
So that could possibly be another 33 reference there. There's no telling. If he was alive, maybe I'd write him and ask him, like, hey, did you mean to sneak some 33s into some of these paintings, or are we just overthinking? You know. But either way, it's still cool. I love that painting, the Hi-Ho in the Fall. Fall's my favorite season, and a lot of the Hi-Ho in the Falls, the trees they're not like that orange color. This was one of the only ones that he did on an 18 by 24. Like I said, most of the Hi-Ho series were all on 16 by 20 inch canvases, but there was a few that he did on bigger ones, and that being one of them, he did a really nice job on the leaves there. So that one looks really nice. So the next one I got, this one is Hi-Ho around the campfire.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've seen a couple of those online for sale.
Yeah, I'd say this was probably his most like popular of the Hi-Hos. Mm-hmm. And then on the back there, it's got a pretty cool note. I don't know if you can read it.
The little men have my favorites. P.S. They show the many moods of life in their names and faces. Enjoy life. Good health. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yep. It's weird. Some of the notes that he would write on the back of these, just really cryptic and bizarre. Some of them, like, I don't know. It's hard to explain. This next one, this is actually my favorite Gacy painting that I have. It took me like 3 years to find this thing, and this is probably one of the more difficult Hi-Ho paintings to find from what everybody's told me and my personal experience. This and the Mines are the two that don't tend to come up as much, but this is Hi-Ho in the Winter, and this one gives me a lot of childhood nostalgia, so I think that might be why this one's my favorite. But it's a nice painting.
Yeah.
Can you see it all right there? Am I holding it up all right?
Maybe hold it up a little bit higher. Yeah, that looks good.
Yeah.
He gives me Bob Ross vibes a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, a lot of these do, like the Hi-Ho in the spring with the mountains in the background.
Yeah.
And I'll show you one that'll give you like real Bob Ross vibes here in a little bit. But yeah, and then like I said, a lot of them he would write notes on. This one had like his real stereotypical note on the back. It just says, "Enjoy this painting as much as I enjoy doing it for you. Best wishes, John Wayne Gacy." That was like his real standard thing. He would write more personal notes to people that he knew or friends with or something. But if he did write a note on the back to like a buyer, it was normally just that exact note: "Enjoy this painting as much as I enjoy doing it for you."
Yeah.
So I'll show you this next one. This was one of his really early paintings. This one's only numbered 303, so this was his 303rd painting out of roughly 2,500, and this has got real Bob Ross vibes to it.
Wow, yeah, for sure.
It's titled High Country Sunset.
That's cool. I didn't know that he just did landscapes. I always thought it was either the Hi-Hos or there was always something to it, so that's cool.
I know in the early days he mainly painted like stuff like this and like Disney characters. Mm-hmm. I don't have it anymore, but I used to have a massive painting he did of Mickey Mouse. Like, I think it was like 24 by 30 something. It was huge. It took up like a whole wall, and it was just Mickey Mouse with like a bright pink background. So he always was into painting Disney characters. I don't know why. Maybe he had like a Disney obsession or something. But in the early days, he did that a lot. And from what I was told, and this may be true, maybe not, that the guys that kind of got involved with getting his paintings out there and becoming his art dealers and stuff, they were the ones kind of pushing him to do more of like the dark shit, like the pogos, the clowns, the skulls and witches and that kind of stuff. And that he originally, he didn't really do those very much, and he didn't really want to, but those were the ones that everybody wanted. So this painting's pretty cool. On the back, it's actually got one of his original price sheets glued to it.
What were the typical prices for his stuff originally?
The first one is one of the Hi-Hos, and it says $50. $50 for a 10 by 20 or 16 by 20, and $75 for an 18 by 24. Yeah.
Well,
So, yeah, and now these paintings, just so you get an idea and everybody else gets an idea, depending on the subject of the painting, they tend to go anywhere between like 2,000 up to, I've seen them go at auction for like 8,000. So depends on where you get it from, you know. There's a couple auction houses that they'll pop up on every now and then, and they always go for higher on there. But and I think the most I've ever sold one for was like 5,000. So they get pretty up there. This one was before he ever started doing pogos and that kind of stuff. He only had one high ho on here, and the rest was just like the he called them the assorted clown heads, but they were just like random clown, like Sad Sap and what was the other one? Elmer something, but yeah, and then he had one. You've probably seen it. It's a pretty popular one too. It's just of Jesus Christ, and it's just a black painting, and it says Christ on it. So yeah, back in the early days, he didn't have a whole lot of selection on what he was painting. So as he gained, buyers and art dealers and stuff like that, he was able to get more supplies and kind of turn it into a business, such. But not that he ever really made money. It just went on his commissary. But
yeah.
Let's see. The next one, this is another one of my favorite ones. This one's really hard to find. I actually have people hit me up almost every week trying to buy this painting off of me. This one's titled Hollywood Monsters.
Oh, whoa. That's really cool. I've never seen anything like that before. I didn't know that he painted any horror-related things. Like, I know he did his skull, but I didn't know it was, like, anything based off of horror movies.
Yeah, I don't think he did very many of these. And, I mean, even such, like, most of the paintings that he did a lot of, he would have that second number to tell you, this was the fifth one I ever did. Mm-hmm. This one, he didn't even have a second set of numbers on it. So either it was the very first one he ever did, or he just didn't bother keeping a number tab on them because he didn't do that many of them. Or I know he was on a lot of pills when he was in prison too, so maybe he just forgot. Stuff like that happens. But yeah, this one people hit me up all the time trying to buy this painting off me, and it's one of my favorite ones. Like, I love this painting. It's really cool. They don't even look good. It's just something about it that, like a serial killer painting horror characters, it's just it's got that creepy vibe to it, I think I got two more to show you. This one is Indian Skull.
Oh, that's really cool. I didn't know he did that either.
Yeah, he did a bunch of different skull variations. Yeah, there's a little bit of a glare off my ring light there, but yeah, he did quite a few different skulls. He would do the Indian skull. He would just do like regular skulls. He would do like two different skulls together. Just yeah, and from what I was told, he did to get that textured effect on the skull is when he would paint it, he'd wrap it in saran wrap to get like that textured skull look to it. And then this one, I've said this about like three of these paintings I know, but this is definitely one of my favorite ones. This was, when I started collecting, this was like always like my holy grail. Like, I hope I find one of these one day. And I found one. And this is definitely, I keep saying it's one of my favorite ones, but this is definitely one of the tops. The Skull Clown. Yeah.
That's what, when I think of Gacy paintings, I think of that, and I think of pogos. Like,
yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's exactly, you said it exactly how it is. A lot of people ask for the Skull Clowns, and they know of Gacy because of the Skull Clowns, and like that band Acid Bath that everybody posts pictures of the front of the album with Pogo on it, and then the back of the album has the Skull Clown on it. And then he had those two books. What were they? Dear Mr. Gacy, or not Dear Mr. Gacy. They call him Mr. Gacy, and then More Letters to Mr. Gacy, which is basically like just copies of a bunch of his like letters and correspondence and stuff. But the one, More Letters to Mr. Gacy, had this on the cover of it. So this one's definitely very iconic when it comes to Gacy paintings. The Pogo, this one, yeah, I'd say they're top two for most well known. So
that's awesome, man.
I think that's all of them. The only other thing I have right here is I've got this. He had this stationery that he would use when he was in prison.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people have probably seen this. It says just a note from John Wayne Gacy, and this one's actually pretty interesting. He typed it on a typewriter and then he just initialed it at the bottom. But this one was actually written to Ken Carnig from Supernaut. I'm sure a lot of people know who Supernaut is.
Mm-hmm.
But this was written to him, and he mentions Rick Statton, the art dealer in Ken in this. So it's kind of a cool piece. And then other than that, I just have another one of his original price sheets here. And this was definitely one of the later ones. As you can see, it's got Pogo, Skull Clown. It's got one of the single skulls on it, High Hose. So, I had that early one taped to the back of the Bob Ross looking painting, and then I had this one a little bit later on. And you can see he upped his prices a little bit, but I mean, even here, first one on there, Skull Clown 10 by 14 inch canvas, $100.
Yeah.
I think I paid like 25 or $3,000 for mine when I got it like a few years ago. So yeah, prices have definitely gone up a little bit.
I'm sure there's a handful of people that were pen pals with him that are glad that they got them for the prices that they did when he was alive. Plus they're probably like personalized and stuff. So
yeah, exactly. I've met quite a few people in this hobby that got all their stuff directly from Gacy. And it's always cool to talk to those guys because they always have like a story. Like anytime that I get in touch with somebody like that, they have all this stuff that they got directly from Gacy, I'm always asking, what was your correspondence like? How did he act with you? And there was a couple guys that said like that they called him all the time. There was one guy, I believe he sold me the Hi Ho in the Fall that he wrote to Gacy for a long time. He had some other paintings from him, but he was invited to his execution.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, like they were close. They talked on the phone all the time. He didn't make it to the execution. Personal reasons, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, you always get some interesting stories from the guys that corresponded with him directly.
Well,
yeah.
One of my last questions, I think, is as a collector and as a dealer of John Wayne Gacy, I know that the paintings are kind of like the holy grail of what people collect, but what are some other items that people collect within the Gacy lore, the Gacy community? I
mean, like I showed you before, like you got your price sheets. These pop up. I actually found this one on eBay,
mm-hmm.
And this one's hand signed, and it's one of the the original ones. It's got like a little note on it. These ones pop up a lot, and these are on like the lower end because just like a signature or a letter from Gacy, they don't go for that much. There's tons of them out there. They're not hard to find. They usually go between $200 and $400 depending on like the content of the letter, I guess you could say, or if it was typed, if it was handwritten, hand signed. So like the price sheets, I get asked about price sheets quite a bit. Letters, they're so easy to find, and I honestly don't even bother with them.
Yeah.
Because there's so many of them out there, and they're not expensive. So if you're looking to collect some stuff but you don't have a big budget, you can get a Gacy piece for cheap if you want to just get a letter. There's been a lot of controversy around the subject, and I won't get too far into it, but he did a handful of marker paintings and pen drawings, and there's some people that will beat it into the ground that he never did marker paintings. I know for a fact he did marker paintings because if you look in his book, there's literally illustrations that he did throughout the book in marker.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they're copies of the original, but I'm like, there's like 20 of them in this book. How are you going to sit here and tell me that he never did any? But those marker drawings, if you do see them, I tend to stay away from them most of the time unless I know exactly who they're coming from. I sold a couple that came from a very, very reputable source that had paperwork like with them, like the original envelope and the letter that came with it. But for the most part, those are definitely one of the most forged Gacy items. But those are on the cheaper side too. You can probably get a marker drawing if it's legit for like between $800 and $1,500. But then once you step up into the painting world of John Wayne Gacy, that's when you're looking to spend $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. So it gets up there. It's an expensive hobby. Trust me, I know. You can see I've got quite a few dollars into it. But I love all this stuff, man. It's weird to have sometimes. Like, you look around at it and you're like, I can't believe like I actually own, paintings that were done by somebody like him. Mm-hmm. And I just have mine hanging all over my house. Like, they're not just like secluded into my office. They're in the living room. They're in the front room. And it's a good conversation piece for sure. When people come over and they're like, what the hell is this clown paint? I'm like, oh, that's by John Wayne Gacy. And they look at me and they're like, John Wayne Gacy, like the serial killer? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, oh, it's what? It's like a reprint? No, it's a real thing. And like, they can't believe it. And then it's crazy though, because everybody's always interested. Everybody always has like questions, instead of just being like, oh, why the fuck would you have that? It's always followed up with like, well, how'd you get it? Like, well, tell me about the paintings he did. Like, give me more. They always want to learn more information about it. And I'm like, let's go. How much time you got, So it's cool having them. There's, I've had way more than what I have now. And I've sold a few to be able to afford one that popped up that I wanted more than the other. Like the patches one, somebody was like, hey, is that patches you have for sale? And I'm like, no. And they're like, well, I'll give you X amount for it. And I'm like, yeah, sounds good. Money talks. So, but some of these paintings I wouldn't sell. Like all the paintings I showed you here today, I'll never sell.
Yeah.
Unless I'm like in a very financially, difficult situation, I can't see myself selling any of these unless it's like for the prices I have them on my website, which that's like what I'll sell them for. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I won't sell them. So yeah, they're cool pieces to have, and it's a lot of fun getting to help people get their hands on them.
Well, one thing that I do want to talk about is, because you collect all of these paintings, and you talked about the markers and that those are forged sometimes. Are there any paintings of his that people are iffy about buying, or any kind of controversial paintings where there's a lot of like the markers that you talked about, where there's like a debate whether that's legit, or like what is the trading market like within experts like you, that you're like, I'm just not even gonna fucking touch that, or that kind of stuff?
As far as Gacy paintings go, there's a lot of fakes out there, just hands down. Buyers beware. Always, and don't always trust the COA, because I have seen very obviously fake Gacy paintings with COAs from, I guess you would say, there's no real like popular COA company out there for authenticating these things, unfortunately. And like JSA, like they're usually pretty good, but I've seen JSA authenticate some fake stuff before. I've seen them authenticate a fake Dahmer signature. I've seen them authenticate a fake Pogo painting. So it's like, it's one of those things that you just got to really talk to somebody that knows their shit, myself, Taylor knows quite a bit from Cult Collectibles, and just trusted sellers throughout the community. Devin from Dark Memorabilia, he sells a lot of relics, and he knows a lot about this stuff. He's been collecting for a long time. And there's plenty of sellers to stay away from. I'm not going to go on here and publicly bash anybody, but just be smart. If you see something come up and it's just like, it's not from somebody like Cult Collectibles or True Crime Collective or Dark Memorabilia, maybe beware and ask somebody like one of us. Like, I know myself, like if somebody messages me and they're like, hey man, this Gacy painting got posted on a page on Facebook, like, could you tell me if it's real or not? I have no problem helping somebody out. If it's going to save somebody from spending $3,000-$4,000 on a fake painting, I'll tell them like, yes or no. I'm not going to go into detail of why it's fake, if it's fake, but I'm going to say stay away from it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, I have no problem doing that. I know there's some people that be like, yeah, like I can tell you, but it's going to cost you a couple $100 for my opinion. I don't give a shit about that. I don't need to make money to keep somebody from buying something that's fake and blowing their hard-earned cash. You know what I mean? So I get messages like that all the time where people will be like, hey, I found this Gacy painting online. What do you think of it? Is it real? Should I buy it? Do you know the seller? And if it's fake, I'll tell them if it's fake. If I think it's real, I say, yeah, it looks good to me. You know, if you can get it for a good price, do it. It's a good piece. So, but you know, with that being said, there is a lot of fake stuff out there. Not even just Gacy stuff. There's a ton of fake Dahmer stuff. There's fake Ramirez stuff. I mean, Ramirez stuff is incredibly easy to fake because all of his artwork, if you've ever seen it, if you're familiar with it, it's all just like pen drawings.
Yeah.
Very easy to fake, that kind of stuff. Jeffrey Dahmer's signature. Most of his signature, it's like handwritten, and it looks like a 4-year-old did it. Very easy to fake. So if you're looking for Jeffrey Dahmer stuff, go to Taylor from Cold Collectibles. If you're looking for Gacy stuff, come to me. You know, everybody's got their little niche, and I have stuff pop up here and there that isn't Gacy related. I just sold like a big lot of Ramirez letters, paperwork, and artwork that somebody hit me up and wanted to sell, and I said, yeah, I know somebody that's always buying Ramirez stuff, so I bought it from him, and I sold it to another gentleman, and yeah, so just be careful. Just like anything else, there's always fakes. If there's money to be made, there's fakes that are going to be made.
Well, man, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today and just give us your insight, share with us your personal collection. You've got an amazing Gacy collection. For anyone who's interested in reaching out to you or checking out your stuff, how can they contact you?
I'm on pretty much everything. Instagram is what I'm most active on. At true_crime_collective is the handle for Instagram. I do have Facebook too. You can find it. Just search True Crime Collective. And then obviously the website, truecrimecollective.com. I'm pretty easy to find. I'm always active on Instagram, so people comment to me, message me. I'm really quick with responding to people or emailing. So anybody that wants to reach out, even if they just want to talk about stuff, I'm always down to talk about this kind of stuff with people. That's the cool thing about this. I've met so many cool people and made friends through this community, like you, Taylor, Devin, countless Nico. There's so many people that like I consider friends that I've met through this niche circle of Murderabilia collectors. So it's definitely cool. But yeah, I'm real easy to find. I have a lot of different shirts. I've got Kemper, Ed Gein, Charles Manson. I got 2 different Gacy shirts. Ted Bundy. I just released a new Carl Panzram shirt. So I've got a full store of plenty of serial killers and cult leaders to choose from. And I print on the best quality stuff. Go look at the reviews; they speak for themselves, and you won't be disappointed.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks again, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon, so you'll probably come back on the show another time, but
yeah.
Thanks, man. Well,
yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been great talking to you.
Yeah, this is a great conversation. All right.
Yeah, definitely.
Peace out.
All right, man.
Thank you to Jordan for giving us that exclusive sneak peek into his personal collection. If you want to see more of his stuff, if you want to pick up some of his shirts, or buy Murderabilia from him, check out thetruecrimecollective.com. I hope to see you all soon. Until next time, this is Murderabilia, Show and Tell.